Scaling, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in this episode. It's the number one question that business owners want to know. How do they get from one revenue to the next revenue? Why each year do you feel like you're at the same revenue and it doesn't seem like you're getting to where you ultimately want to go? I have a great guest on the show today, and this person, Bryan Swetmon, who's the owner of Bar Hospitality, SCS Contracting, and Nationwide Construction, is going to talk about this. He took his company from 700K to over 21 million. What a great guy to learn from. So we're going to dive into this and we're going to ask that exact question. It's what business owners want to know. So tune in. You don't want to miss this episode. This is Help, I'm a Contractor podcast. Hi, I'm Seth Lewis. I am a blue-collar business coach. Finally, someone that understands what contractors actually go through. My goal and vision is to connect business owners with knowledge while tackling some of the industry's toughest challenges. Please subscribe to my content and let's support each other to create awareness for our industry. Check out what I have going on at www.bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. Check out my book that has helped business owners across the country change their business and their life. But for now, it's time for the show. Let's get it. Hey, Bryan, welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
What's going on in your world today?
Oh, just down here in Atlanta, trying to get it done. We've got boots on the ground and working hard. Probably got about 10 or 11 projects running. So just trying to make it happen.
Cool. Awesome. So tell me a little bit about your background. I mean, you have a pretty interesting background in construction and where you're at now, and you have some different business ventures. So we'll just start there. Tell us about you and how you got to where you're at and where you at currently.
Great. I appreciate it. I started when I was really young, when I was like 8 years old. My oldest brother, who was about 13 years older than me, had me out on, he had a paint contracting company, and he had me out there on the summers sanding louver doors, which I'll never forget. And, every summer I would just help him out, and I just learned how to paint. And we would do commercial jobs or residential paint jobs. And I did that for, until I was like 16, 17. And then I remember I started dating this girl, and her mom said, well, can you paint my house? And I was like, sure, why not? And that's kind of like my first job, right? On my own. And I just painted her house, and then the neighbor wanted me to paint their house, and then ended up having a little rotten wood or something on the house. And so kind of became a little carpenter. And then it kind of grew from there. I ended up paying my way through the University of Georgia, go Dogs. And it kind of grew into a business as I was going to school. So when I got out, I just kind of went into having a paint company. And that went well for, probably 10 years. And then the economy back in 2008 kind of hit, and it kind of shut us down. I had to rethink things. I lost everything. Ended up going out to Texas for a hurricane. The Hurricane Ike could just come through Texas, and there was some work out there. So I went out there for a year or so. And then I came back to Atlanta a couple of years after that and started back up and started more into like a general contractor position, and started that company, Nationwide Construction Labor, in 2011. And that's where today was, I think our first year was like $700,000 in revenue. And last year we did 21 million. And so, awesome. Yeah, so it was a blessing, when I lost all that stuff. It humbled me and made me get my priorities straight, and kind of refocused on not being so just one dimensional. We kind of opened up, we started doing hurricane work with general contracting, painting, drywall, commercial, residential. So we kind of diversified our business, and it's helped us weather some of the ups and downs in the last 10 years. And so,
That's an awesome story. And I think there's one of the things that I think is really interesting is growing a business and scaling it. So there's a lot of people that have an organization that might be 500,000 or a million or 3, 5, 15, whatever it may be. And a lot of times we find, or I see that they get stuck at a certain revenue and they just kind of can't break through. So I'd be curious, on your take on, what has been some of the keys? Like, so there's so many business owners that want to scale. Scaling's a hot topic. It's how do you grow this thing? How do you keep it going? So somebody that's sitting there at 5 million, they've been at 5 million for the last 5 years, maybe 10 years. What are some things that they could look at to get to the next level that you saw?
great question. And I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's multiple of things. And, first, I think you got to look at like your capacity with the people you have on your team. You're probably, the team you have is probably maxed out as much as they can do. And so you're going to have to add some people. And that might be a little bit painful at first. Financially, it's going to take you a little more money to get past that, right? You got to spend a little money to get past that next phase. And so, what I would do is, the way that I don't incur too much cost is I'll use subcontractors in that case. I'll try to find a crew of a good subcontractor that I could hire maybe to do one specific job. And then they would, that would add to the revenue, right? Something I wouldn't usually take or my team couldn't handle, but then I'd find another team that could handle it. I would commit to that job. And then I would use that subcontractor. That way you're not on the hook for the overhead and keeping them busy all the time. And then, you just treat that subcontractor right. And then if they do you a good job, then you just get another one, you keep feeding them work, and all of a sudden you have that additional revenue. And that's the way I've built it over time. And then you can add pieces to your team that will help you support that subcontractor or support that business. And we've also looked at it from different, like I said, different revenue types. And we've not only, when we've hit a wall, maybe on drywall or something, like we don't have any more customers, or we've kind of maxed out that, we'll look for, do more restoration work. If we're trying to do hotel, we're trying to get into the hotel rehab business. And so we look at different revenue streams as well, not just trying to grow the biggest drywall or paint company out there. We're trying to do, maybe a little bit of everything. So that kind of bumps up the revenue as well. So those two things worked well for us.
So there's that myth out there that says if you do everything, you're not good at anything. And then there's people that say you should diversify like that. So, I know somebody's sitting there saying that or thinking about that as they're going to be listening to this, but what is it, or can you slice it either way? Is it something that you would say, hey, for those people that say like, niche down in one area and be good at it because there's enough work out there, maybe could that be why they're stuck and not getting past it? When is there maybe and I guess what I'm kind of exploring a little bit is maybe that works to a certain revenue. So we talked about that $5 million company. So maybe that got them to the 5 million, but now it's starting to maybe add these other, channels that could bring in revenue.
Yeah, that's another good point. And for me, I do think there is something to that specialty. I love to hire specialty subcontractors that all they do is that one thing because they're really good at it and they focused on that. But what we're really good at is what I'm good at is running a company. And so what I do is I find whatever we're doing, if it's drywall, if it's restoration, if it's metal framing or painting, I just find the experts or the subcontractors or the guys that can do that work that are really good at that. We don't have like my painter doesn't metal frame and my metal frame doesn't paint. And there's a reason for that because you're not going to be that good at either one of them. We just try to find the guy that's really good at that one thing, and then we go out and sell that. And then we use those people that are really, really good at that one thing. I do think it opens up more revenue for us, but I do think even if you're a specialty contractor and all you want to do is metal frame or all you want to do is paint, then you just have to look at the next big player above you, maybe the big GC that's really putting out $5 million worth of metal framing on one project. They're out there. You're just going to have to build up to that. So there is, my brother, unfortunately passed away. I think I told you that story, and he had a really large paint company, and he's the one that taught me all this. God rest his soul. And I'm thankful, and I can kick his butt sometimes, but he was running a $30 million paint company, and all he did was paint, and he specialized in it. He made a lot of money. He's very successful, but he got in with the big players, and they gave him big contracts. And so, that's when you get into the big leagues, it separates a lot of people, and you're really going to have your insurance and your documentation and all really in order to get up to that big volume, to start to play with the big leagues. So in the way I think you do that is you just take smaller projects and you just start increasing the size of them, you perform, and then you start going after it a little bit bigger. You obviously don't go from a $10,000 job to a $2 million job. You go from maybe a $10,000 job to a $100,000 job. And then you knock that one out of the park. And then you go up to the next, the guy and the next, whoever's going to be the next bigger contractor. And you go to them and say, hey, listen, I did this. I'd love to bid on your work. And then just show what you can do.
So when you look at that, how do you find those? Because I think what I'm trying to help people do is, they want to grow, but they're not actually sure how or where to get these places or get that bigger contract. They say, well, I'm not getting the sales that I want. Now, in the construction world today, there's a lot of work out there, to be done. You hear like you need workers and this, that, and the other thing. But it's the idea of, okay, if they want to keep getting the bigger job, what are some techniques or things that they could do or where they could look to get that to that next level? Because they might not know who's doing it. Like, what would you advise somebody where to look or what to do?
Yeah, it's tough. I followed in my brother's footsteps. And so then I had a lot of contacts already in that division or in that part of the company. He built a lot of contacts, but I can tell you, he started from the ground level and just made one relationship and built it to another. But on my construction side, I do have the same issue. We started from like 700,000, like I said, and we're up to 20 million. And it was just, you can try to leverage your relationships. Each relationship, you can ask them who they know, or what's going on in there. What do they see in the future? What developments do they have coming up? And I also, I read the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and they have these. There's always stories about what development's coming up, who's developing it, who's the builder, and then there's a program called Builder Connect, and you sign up for that. It's a monthly membership, but you just put in there what you specialize in, and all the big boys, all the big contractors use that, and they'll send out bid invites. Now, some of them are kicking tires, obviously, but if you keep pushing those estimates out, maybe it'll at least get hit one. But and hopefully you can get the one and get your foot in the door. That's the key. But it's also just making relationships. You just gotta, it's who unfortunately, a lot of times. But if you can just keep knocking on doors, put yourself out there as much as you can, and it'll increase your odds for sure.
So I love that. And I believe that's spot on. You got to get yourself out there. You got to build your networking connect. This is going to sound really, maybe silly, goofy, but I want to drill down on that to say, I just don't know that everybody knows how to do that. So there's some people that's just natural. They go out there and all of a sudden they have conversations and work comes to them. But for the person that's saying, man, I just, what do you mean by that? How do you put yourself out there? I want to be the person that bumps into those people and does it. Is it about, what does building a relationship look like, and how should you go about it with these people that are managing these larger projects? Is it trying to get them to go like to hang out? Is it going for coffee? Is it going for a drink? What how do you get around these people? Is it networking, and what do you do? Because I think everybody says kind of the same thing about you gotta be around these people, but I'd like to just kind of see like what's maybe worked for you, and how do you just generate some conversation that you can get in front of them?
Again, another good question, and it's a tough question. What I would probably recommend, what I did when I was in the field, when it was a lot smaller, I'm not in the field as much as I used to be. That's a good thing and a bad thing. But you're obviously going to start building a relationship with, let's just say, the job superintendent or somebody on site for that company, right? And you're not gonna maybe know who the VP is or the president of the company. But if you can just start with who you are dealing with, build a rapport with them. Like you said, bring them donuts or take them to lunch, or just build that rapport with them. And then you maybe the next guy in line is the PM. You really, in my line of business, the paint side of it, it's really important to know your PM. He's the one that hires you, and he's the one that can fire you, and he's the one that brings you to the next project. He's in charge of all that. And you really want to, maybe you take him golfing. He's usually not on site. He's probably in the office. And, I'll send them to the Braves game. I'll send them Braves tickets, or, ask if they want to do something outside of work every once in a while. And, and you just really just got to service them. And then, these bigger corporations will do golf outings. We go out to golf outings all the time, and we'll do a sponsorship. They want to see sponsorship, and so you may have to pay a little bit, $1,000 to get in a golf tournament, but then you go and mingle with them. And then you're just gonna, I tell you, if it was me, you just start at the bottom and kind of work your way up next. And eventually you're going to be able to shake the hand of somebody, higher up. If you're doing a good job for them, you're going to get to know the people up, and they're going to get to know who you are. Now, cold calling stuff, I'm not great at it either, to be honest with you. So that's not one of my strong points either. But there are, in Atlanta, they have something called Contractors Connect, and it's a social. They actually invite developers, and they invite just certain contractors. It's kind of an invitation thing only, but that's a good place to start meeting some of the people that are mover and shakers. But it is to get into that next step up and meeting developers and build, the big guns. It's hard. It's a small niche, and you just got to work at it. And I found, over time, the more you knock, the better chance you got getting in there. But it's not going to be easy. I'll guarantee you that.
So when you think about this role and getting, we're talking again about scaling up. We're talking about going from that revenue of maybe 5 to 10 or 5 to 15 or whatever it may be, continuing to push it. Maybe it's 20 to 25 or 30, whatever. And, when you're scaling up and you're making these relationships, is it about the owner going to do this, or can a sales rep do it? So as you're scaling up, I think what I'd like to, understand and get out there is how much of that came from you building the relationships, because a lot of times companies will bring on a sales rep, and they'll be taxed or charged to build that relationship. So in your experience, have you seen that work? Or for these owners that wonder what they're doing, okay, they got out of the truck, I like to call it. So now you're out of the truck. Now they're figuring out what the heck they need to do. Is it really just continuing to build relationships? Are they the person that needs to do that? Or do you feel a salesperson can do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting, because I'm in the, as almost all contractors, a lot of them, we wear all the hats, right? I've been wearing the sales hat and the management hat and the CEO hat, and sometimes the hang the drywall hat. It's been a while for that, but we got to wear that. So I've always been wearing that hat, and I'm actually kind of a control kind of guy. And so it's hard for me to give up that control of like letting somebody take the client. That's what I love to do. That's what all I really want to do, is just like mingle with the client and go sell them on something and hang out with them. That's what I want to do. So I haven't hired a salesman per se. So I've been the one doing it. And that's interesting about my brother. He was the face of the company, and when he died, that was kind of the Achilles heel of it too. We had to come in and sell ourselves since he wasn't there anymore. So I think it's beneficial to get a salesman in there. to kind of not just so that you're just all the company, because if something happens to you, then the company's gone, right?
Right.
And so I would recommend, I think anybody can build a relationship with anybody, and you can have it represented as a company, like the salesman can be nationwide. And I think they can sell it that way, and they can build a relationship. And I tell you, the biggest thing I've learned is trust. If you can build trust with anybody, I know it probably sounds cliche, but in our business, if these guys can trust you, like PMs we work with now, if they trust I can get the job done, that I'm not going to change order them to death, and that they're not going to have problems, you're 90% done. They'll tell you what your number is, needs to be on the next project, and you just negotiate it out. So I definitely think you need to build trust, no matter if it's you or if it's a sales rep. And if you have trust in this business, you can kind of name your own, future on with the client, because that's the way it is. Because the good thing is I got the perspective from being a subcontractor to do these big GCs, from being a GC that hires subcontractors. And all my subcontractors is the same guys, because I just trust them. They give me a number, I'm not questioning it. I just put that into my proposal and use those guys again. So, I mean, that's, I think I am looking for a sales rep. And if I had to find somebody, I would just make sure that they're trustworthy, and that they're presenting your company the way you would present it. And I think you'd be fine.
So just piggybacking off of that with the sales rep, if you have a sales rep, because a lot of companies do that or will, have that. Do you think there's an advantage? And this is kind of a slippery slope, in the sense of, if the owner's doing it, then they kind of get stuck in it, like you were saying. But you have and they're the consistent face, like you mentioned, your brother, he was there for years and just built that relationship. So when he's going there, they know and they trust his brand. How do you think that when you have a sales rep that might last, I forget, there's a stat, the average sales rep might last 2 to 3 years. So how do you think that plays into the momentum that you're trying to build if you're scaling up? Or you made another good point and comment about the brand. So does the brand speak louder than that change? Because again, what we're trying to do here is, as we're looking at scaling up, what are things that are going to keep us on the track to get there, and what are things that, if we're switching sales reps every year and a half, our deals not coming through because we're not building that trust. So I love the topic. I love what we're talking about here, because this is how you work to get to the next level.
Right. And I think I don't think contractors are good at that. I don't think we're good at building a brand. I think we're good at building ourselves and what we do, right? And if I had to work on myself a little bit, or my company message, it would be more about nationwide. It wouldn't be about Bryan, the contractor, which, people call me. I'm trying to set these systems in place that people are more calling me nationwide, and they're calling the company instead of they're calling Bryan, the contractor. So I think there's people out there a lot smarter than me on systems that would probably be able to set that up. Actually, I hired a young lady to help me with that, to set a system in place that takes me out of the equation more. And it would be tough, but I think if you could get a system in place where you're selling SCS or nationwide, no matter if what salesman was in place, I think the client would feel okay with it if he wasn't there anymore. And if if you're selling the whole package, like your employees, your project managers, your superintendents, your office staff, because that was the thing when Steve passed away. The secretary had been there 20 years. There was an estimator there was 20 years. Another vice president was there for 30. So once I walked in and said, "Hey, I'm Steve's brother, and Teresa, Claire, and Ray are all going to be there," everybody kind of took a breath and said, "Okay, everything's going to stay the same, right?" So I do think there's a way to sell your company without having just to sell yourself. I'm not going to probably be the guy to tell you on this podcast how to do that. But if you do find somebody, have me back on with them, or at least let me know, because I want to tune in.
Sounds good. Yeah, and that those are so important because that ultimately allows, owners to get out of the way. So that in that case, so here's the thing. I like to say get out of the truck, but then there's some other things that we want to actually get out of, and ultimately that leads to, freedom, flexibility, things that, business owners want to do beyond the things that they have to do. They can choose when they want to, hang the drywall, or choose when they want to go in and do some numbers and projections and the fun stuff. So, I think that's really, interesting and great points around that. What have you found with the labor market? So, and I guess there's contractors that say that there's not work out there, or not workers out there. There's ones that are fully staffed. I work with people that, we help show them how to be fully staffed and different things. A lot of it's mindset stuff, but I would like just your input on maybe how the wages have changed from maybe 2 years ago. So assuming, you have a good staff and they're good people. I'm not talking about the people that aren't delivering for their wage. I'm talking about somebody that is delivering, somebody that you want on your team. How has the rate of their work basically changed in the last 2 or 3 years? Because one of the things that I'm sensing with some contractors. We'll be right back to the show. I want to invite you to my Blue Collar Mastermind group. This is a group of blue-collar business owners who share input on tough topics, support, celebrate, and learn from each other. The world's best business owners, leaders, actors, athletes, and musicians all have coaches or are part of a similar group to grow and succeed. If you want more from your business, have limited time, don't want to break the bank, this group is for you. Learn more and apply to the group at bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. Because one of the things that I'm sensing with some contractors, they haven't picked up what's going on in the market. Like I spoke with somebody and they said, the cost of living's going up. I can't find anybody. So what I heard was the cost of living's going up and you're paying them the same thing. Well, no wonder they don't want to work for you. So I think as a part of scaling the organization and having people, like you said, that, have been with, you or your brother's company for 15, 20 years, these things are cyclical. They continue to happen. So I think a part of scaling and growing a company and being sustainable is recognizing as soon as something happens, and you got to be ahead of that or your people leave. So kind of what have you seen in that kind of space, or how have you been able to adjust people, or is it just the same?
Another great question, Seth, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about, as I've gotten, as our company's done better and I've had a little more time not in the truck. And I've actually been able to like start to look at, and not being so hyper focused on running the business and worried about cash and all this stuff, which, I was there for a long time. And I wasn't worried about, I wasn't looking at my workers. I was just looking at like how the least amount I could pay them and how could, to get the most out of them. How could they make me? I'm struggling.
It froze for a second there. So we can cut that and clean that up. But it was just, you started to say about how your workers were, you were looking at how they were, what they could do for you.
Right. Yeah. So when I was starting out, or, the lean years, I went through some tough times. It was always about how much I could get out of them and the least amount I could pay them, or just, just trying to struggle. I was trying to get a check in the bank that week to pay them on the next day, and I struggled through a lot. And the good thing, the beautiful thing about having success and getting older, my priorities have changed. And I'm now looking at how I can make their lives better. I can make them some more money, how they can be more successful, how they can, retire, take care of their family. And so that kind of, leads into what you were saying. Like, I have this core group of guys that have worked for me for 20 years on my construction company. And now you're right. They come to me and they say their rent's up. Food's costing more. It's taking me more gas to get to the job, Brian. And so I'm sitting down and it really consciously, it bothers me. And I'm just like, I need to give you more money. And I've got to raise my prices. It's not going to be, I'm just going to pass it along. And that's just the market of it. Inflation's everywhere. And my guys need to make more money so they can pay their bills. And I don't want anybody struggling like the way I had to struggle when I was younger. And so I've been giving them raises. Actually, I just gave a guy a $3 an hour raise today. He called and said, "Hey, can I pick up my check early?" And I called the secretary and said, "Yeah, let him pick up his check early." And, he got a raise of $3. And so it's just, you are going to have to, if you want to keep these guys, and, these guys have been loyal to me through the good times and the bad, and they mean a lot to me. And I think just like I said about the client, if the employee trusts you and you can trust your employee, there's not much that I won't do for them. There's not much they won't do for me. So, and to have those open conversations, if somebody trusts you and they feel comfortable enough to come to you and say, "Hey, Brian, I'm not making enough money to make ends meet," that's invaluable to have that open conversation with your employees.
Yeah, and I just want to say great job on that, because that's something that's really powerful. And I think people need to rewind and re-listen to that segment right there, because there's a lot of good things there. It's having your people trust you. It's building that rapport, because first of all, they got to be able to approach you and say what's going on. Because if they can't, they're going to go look somewhere else that can give them that money or whatever it may be. But just looking out for people when they know that your heart's in the right place and you're looking to take care of them, it makes all the difference in the world. And this is a part of the retention thing. People that are doing these things aren't having the same challenges. Are there challenges? Absolutely, there's challenges. That's a part of what business is. But it's about how to break through those and do it effectively. So doing that with your people is just a great job, and being able to see and keep that line of communication open. I think that, I look at some of the wages for basic, jobs as of like, even in a 5-year period, if somebody was getting, or even 2 years, if somebody was getting $15 an hour as just like no skilled labor, now they might be at 20 or more, or 25. It's just changed dramatically. And I feel like the companies that stay stuck on that want to hold on and say, "You're not doing enough for me. I can't pay you." But I look at companies now and they pay somebody $20 an hour and that person it takes them 3 hours to do a task. And you pay one person 40 and they do it in one. I'm going for the 40 guy. I want that guy. But there's so many people that can't even see that clear example there. They're scared of it because of the pain that happened before with cash flow and stuff like that. But when you get the right people that stick around, they're worth that higher wage. You have to have numbers and data to see it. But I just think you're doing a great job there with your people, and that really helps, with the results. So
Yeah, Sean, that's the thing. And I was worried that people wouldn't pay the additional on the other end. You also get that scarcity mindset that I can't charge extra. They're not going to pay me $38 an hour for a guy I'm paying 25. They're not going to do it. But they will. You will find the client if you're treating your guys well, they do a good job. There are people out there that'll pay you that extra, the premium, to have that. And if you do the right thing, if you treat, they show up when they're supposed to show up. You do what you say you're going to do, not just the employee, but you do what you say you're going to do. They show up when they're supposed to, and you pay the guy, and they don't have to have any headaches. Somebody will pay you that rate. So don't be scared that it's not gonna, you're not going to get reimbursed for it. That was my mindset, that I was not going to be able to charge more money. But no, what I did is I've turned around and raised my estimating rates. I've raised my hourly rates, and then people have said, okay. It's a good point. We have a big contract with a restoration company, and we were at $20 an hour. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. We've held on for, I forgot how many years we've been at 20, but I said, we gotta be at 25. The email went out and they're like, no problem. I was worried about it. And like an hour later, they were like, yeah, we'll keep you. It's my biggest client. You get nervous when you're going up against your biggest client. You don't want to like shake the boat.
Ruffle feathers, yeah.
But they understand too. They get it. Everybody looks at the news, everybody knows prices are going up. It's only a matter of time.
And I think the other thing that's so important to realize as business owners is the mindset piece that holds us back and sometimes limits us. Sometimes we project the worst case scenario. So we project what's going to happen when we lose our biggest client, and we go down that rabbit hole and we go hard, and that actually prevents us from having that a normal just conversation. So I just want to encourage people that are listening or businesses to just have the conversation instead of, I call it catastrophize, and you just catastrophize what could happen and all the negative effects and everything that it almost goes to this scarcity but poverty mindset, where we're not talking necessarily about poverty. We know but it's the idea of, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to eat if I lose this client. The mind does that. It's not so much that you truly believe that, and that's not actually what's happening, but we do that in so many situations. I know I've been guilty of that. When somebody says, we need to talk, I'm like, they're going to quit. They're going to quit. So I had to work with that myself, because I would project that into the worst case scenario. Now I got to hire people. Now I got to do this. Now I got to do that. And now the service isn't going to get done, whatever it may be. But it's just stopping and saying, oh, they wanted a new tool in their truck. Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, you can have it. That's no problem. So I think those are things, great points, good things to highlight here. So just a couple quick fire questions just to end it. The construction industry would be better if.
Probably eliminating mistakes. I think there's so much money lost on redoing things. And it's not an easy solution, because you have so many people involved on a project that are doing their own thing. And so to get that collaboration, I think, softwares are making that a little bit better. And a good GC can really help with that, or even a superintendent. But there's all these, I don't know how many, if you have a typical construction job, you're going to have 20 different subcontractors on there. And somebody's going to do something that's going to affect somebody else, that they're going to have to redo something. I was on a job site earlier this morning, and we did the metal framing on it. The HVAC guy came in there and he's like, no, you got to redo everything above the ceiling that you got going to deck, because it's in our way. And so we had to turn the change order in for a couple $1,000s. So I think it'd be better if there wasn't so much redo, and that if each subcontractor took a little more, maybe care or thought about the other subcontractor involved as they're doing the work.
Awesome. I can build this in my sleep, or blank in my sleep. What is it?
Gosh, I was going to say anything, but that's not true. But what could I build in my sleep? I could definitely build a house in my sleep. That's easy. Houses are easy. Residential is really easy. Commercial's a lot more detailed. So
Biggest skill.
I think caring about people.
Biggest challenge.
Probably not caring about myself enough.
Cabin or beach house?
I got a cabin, so let's go beach house.
All right. Last thing you got on Amazon?
Vitamins.
That's good. That's a good thing. Ford, Chevy, Dodge.
Ford for sure. Got me an F-250.
Favorite brand of equipment?
Milwaukee.
I want other business owners in construction to know what?
If you just keep doing the next right thing, everything's going to be okay.
This was a great episode, scaling up, talking business. Bryan, I really appreciate you being on the show today. It was great chatting it up.
Yeah, Sean, I really appreciate having me. It was a lot of fun. Anytime.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Hey, it's Seth. Thanks for listening. For more information about my Blue Collar Mastermind group, Blue Collar Gear, free resources, or my book, go to bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. You can subscribe, like, and share if you enjoy this. Thanks again.